"Dad, can I call you Dad now? For real?" His voice trembled slightly, those 9 words hanging in the air between us. I stood frozen in the doorway of his bedroom, the weight of what he was asking hitting me like a physical force. This wasn't just a question, it was everything I never knew I wanted until that moment. My name is James, and this is the story of how I became a father to a boy who didn't share my blood but claimed my heart completely. Before you continue watching, if this story resonates with you at all, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything, and there are so many more stories like this one that I want to share with you all. 3 years earlier, I was that guy, the one who swore he'd never date a single mom. "It's just too complicated," I'd tell my friends over beers. "You're raising someone else's kid, dealing with baby daddy drama, and you'll always be second place." I had it all figured out, or so I thought. Then I met Sarah at a friend's barbecue on a sweltering July afternoon. She wore a simple sundress and had this laugh that seemed to bubble up from somewhere genuine and unguarded. We talked for hours that day, and it wasn't until I was getting ready to ask for her number that she mentioned, almost casually, I should get going. "My son's with my mom today, but I promised I'd be back for bedtime." I remember feeling that immediate instinct to pull back. A son. A single mom. All the warnings from friends echoed in my head. But something about Sarah made me ignore them all. I asked for her number anyway. Our first date was coffee. Simple, non-committal. She talked about her work as a graphic designer, her dreams of traveling to Japan someday, her love of terrible sci-fi movies. I found myself leaning in, captivated by everything about her. When she mentioned her son, Ethan, her entire face transformed with a kind of love I'd never witnessed before. "He's 7, she said. "Smart as a whip and obsessed with dinosaurs. His father left when he was 2. Decided fatherhood wasn't for him after all." She said it matter-of-factly, without bitterness, but I could see the protective fierceness in her eyes. 3 coffee dates later, she asked if I wanted to meet Ethan. I surprised myself by saying yes without hesitation. That first meeting was at a park. I brought a model dinosaur kit, a suggestion from Sarah, and watched as Ethan's initial shyness transformed into excited chatter about triceratops and velociraptors. He was small for his age, with his mother's expressive eyes and a serious little furrow that appeared between his brows when he concentrated. "Do you like dinosaurs too?" he asked me suspiciously. "I'm more of a beginner," I admitted. "Maybe you could teach me?" The smile that broke across his face was worth every warning I'd ignored. Dating Sarah meant dating Ethan too. It meant dinosaur museums on weekends and animated movies instead of the thrillers I usually preferred. It meant learning to lower my voice during arguments because little ears were always listening. It meant understanding that sometimes plans would be cancelled because of fevers or school projects or a child who just needed his mom. My friends didn't get it. "You're playing daddy to another man's kid," my buddy Mark said one night. "What happens when the real dad decides to come back into the picture?" "He's not coming back," I said with more certainty than I felt. And even if he did, that wouldn't change how I feel about them. But the truth was, those doubts crept in during quiet moments. I'd watch Sarah tuck Ethan in at night, their foreheads touching as they whispered their goodnights, and feel like an intruder in their perfect little world. What did I have to offer them, really? What if I wasn't cut out for this? What if I was just setting us all up for heartbreak? A year into our relationship, I moved into their small 2-bedroom apartment. We tried to make the transition as smooth as possible for Ethan. Sarah and I had long talks about boundaries, discipline, and what my role should be. We agreed I wasn't trying to replace his father, I was just another adult who cared about him. The first few months were harder than I expected. Ethan tested boundaries constantly. He'd ignore my requests to clean up his toys or brush his teeth. He'd ask Sarah to double-check anything I told him, as if my words couldn't be trusted. Some nights, after he was asleep, I'd find Sarah crying quietly in the bathroom, overwhelmed by the tension. Maybe this was a mistake, I whispered one night, holding her as she wiped away tears. Maybe it's too soon. He's scared, she said simply. He's afraid to love you because he's afraid you'll leave too. Those words haunted me. I thought about my own father, who had stayed physically present but emotionally distant throughout my childhood. I thought about Ethan's father, who had walked away completely. I realized then that this wasn't just about me proving something to Ethan, it was about breaking a cycle. So I stayed. Through the tantrums and the cold shoulders. Through the parent-teacher conferences where I was introduced as my mom's friend, instead of anything more meaningful. Through the nights when Ethan would wake up crying and call for his mom, never for me. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to change. Ethan started asking me to help with his homework instead of waiting for Sarah. He began sitting next to me during movie nights. One Saturday morning, he knocked on our bedroom door at an ungodly hour, dinosaur book in hand, and asked if I wanted to read with him. "Just us guys," he said, and something in my chest expanded painfully. When I proposed to Sarah on her birthday, with Ethan's help hiding the ring inside a dinosaur egg we'd crafted together, I made sure to get down on one knee in front of both of them. "I want to be a family," I said, looking from Sarah to Ethan. "All three of us." Sarah said yes through happy tears. Ethan watched us with solemn eyes before asking, "Does this mean you'll be my stepdad for real?" "Yes," I told him. "If that's okay with you." He nodded seriously. "I guess that's okay." Not exactly the enthusiastic endorsement I'd hoped for, but it was something. The wedding was small, just close friends and family in Sarah's parents' backyard. Ethan was the ring bearer, taking his job so seriously that he practiced walking slowly for weeks beforehand. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, I knelt down to Ethan's level. "We're officially family now," I told him, offering my hand for a high five. Instead, he threw his arms around my neck in the first real hug he'd ever initiated. Over his shoulder, I saw Sarah watching us, her hand pressed to her mouth, eyes shining. Marriage brought new challenges. Sarah's ex suddenly reappeared, wanting to reconnect with the son he'd abandoned years earlier. Ethan came home from his first visit quiet and confused. "My real dad says I don't have to listen to James because he's not my real parent," he reported, not meeting my eyes. I felt like I'd been punched. Sarah was furious, ready to call her ex and end the visits then and there. But I asked for a moment alone with Ethan. "Your dad is right about one thing," I told him, choosing my words carefully. "I'm not your biological father. But being a real parent isn't just about DNA. It's about being there every day, helping with homework, making sure you brush your teeth, loving you even when you're driving me crazy." I smiled to soften the words. "I may not be your first dad, but I promise to be your last. I'm not going anywhere." He nodded, but I could tell he was still processing. These were big concepts for a 9-year-old. The visits with his biological father became sporadic, then stopped altogether. Each disappearance left new wounds that Sarah and I worked to heal. We never spoke badly of him in front of Ethan, but we made sure Ethan knew that the failure was not his. Some adults just weren't ready for the responsibility of parenthood. "Like how some kids aren't ready for a pet?" Ethan asked once. "Something like that," I agreed, marveling at his ability to make sense of a senseless situation. Life settled into a new normal. I adopted the role of Ethan's stepfather with increasing confidence. We developed our own rituals: Saturday morning pancakes, bike rides around the neighborhood, a secret handshake that made Sarah roll her eyes fondly. I attended every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every doctor's appointment. I learned to check for monsters under the bed and to administer just the right amount of sympathy for scraped knees. When Ethan turned 10, we decided to move to a house with a yard. The three of us spent weekends looking at properties, with Ethan solemnly evaluating each one based on tree climbing potential and proximity to his friends. We finally found a modest 3-bedroom with a maple tree perfect for a future treehouse. Moving day was chaos, boxes everywhere, furniture in disarray, everyone exhausted. That night, we ordered pizza and ate it picnic style on the living room floor since we couldn't find the kitchen table. "This is our house," Ethan said wonderingly, looking around at the bare walls and stacked boxes. "All of us together." "All of us together," Sarah echoed, squeezing my hand. Later that night, after Sarah had fallen asleep amid the unpacked boxes, I went to check on Ethan. His room was the only one we'd fully set up, wanting to give him a sense of stability amid the change. I found him sitting on his bed, staring at a framed photo of the three of us from our wedding day. "Everything okay, buddy?" I asked, sitting beside him. He didn't answer right away, still looking at the photo. Then, without looking up, he asked the question that would change everything. "Dad, can I call you Dad now? For real?" The world seemed to stop. In all our time together, he had called me James, never Dad. We had never pushed the issue, believing that titles should come naturally, if at all. "Are you sure?" I managed to ask, my voice thick with emotion. "That's a pretty big deal." He nodded, finally looking up at me. "You do all the things a dad is supposed to do. And you never leave. So I think you're my real dad now." I pulled him into a hug, not trusting myself to speak. Over his shoulder, I saw Sarah standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face, witnessing this moment that neither of us had dared to hope for. That night, lying awake beside my sleeping wife, I thought about all the warnings I'd received about marrying a woman with a child. How people had cautioned me about the complications, the divided loyalties, the thankless role of step-parent. They weren't entirely wrong, it had been complicated and challenging in ways I never could have anticipated. But what they failed to mention was this: the indescribable feeling of a child choosing you, not out of obligation or biology, but out of love and trust. The privilege of watching a guarded heart slowly open. The honor of being the one who stays. The next morning at breakfast, Ethan casually asked, "Can you pass the cereal, Dad?" The word hung in the air like a gift. Sarah's eyes met mine across the table, both of us understanding the magnitude of this simple moment. "Sure thing, son," I replied, the word feeling both foreign and completely right on my tongue. In the years that followed, our family grew and changed. Sarah and I welcomed a daughter, Emma, when Ethan was 12. I worried about how he would adjust to sharing our attention, but the first time he held his baby sister, the fierce protectiveness in his eyes mirrored exactly what I felt for him. "She's so tiny," he whispered, letting her grasp his finger. "I'm going to teach her all about dinosaurs when she's bigger." "I'm counting on it," I told him. Watching my children together, because that's what they both were, my children, I realized how much I would have missed if I had listened to those early warnings. If I had been too afraid of the complications, the challenges, the uncertain path of loving a child who didn't share my DNA. Ethan is 16 now, navigating the turbulent waters of adolescence. He's traded dinosaurs for basketball and video games. He rolls his eyes at my dad jokes and argues about curfews. But every night before bed, no matter how heated our disagreements have been, he still says, "Night, Dad," with the same certainty he had on that moving day 6 years ago. Sometimes, in quiet moments, I catch him looking at Emma with a protective tenderness that reminds me of myself. I see him patiently teaching her to tie her shoes or read a difficult word, and I recognize the cycle of care that continues, unbroken. Last Father's Day, Ethan gave me a handmade card. Inside, he had written, "Thanks for choosing to be my dad when you didn't have to." I kept it in my wallet, pulling it out on difficult days as a reminder of what matters most. People still sometimes ask if it's different loving a child who isn't really mine. I always smile at the question, thinking of homework help and nightmare comfort, of basketball games and driving lessons, of 1,000 ordinary moments that built an extraordinary bond. He is really mine, I always say. Just not in the way you mean. If you're watching this and you're hesitating about loving a child who doesn't share your blood, who comes as part of a package deal with someone you care about, I won't tell you it's easy. It's not. There will be days of doubt and rejection, complicated emotions and uncertain boundaries. But I will tell you this, some of life's greatest gifts come in unexpected packages. Sometimes, family isn't what you're born into but what you choose to build together, day by day, moment by moment. And when a child who has every reason to guard his heart instead trusts you with it completely, when he looks at you and sees not what you lack but what you offer, there is no greater honor in this world. So to those who warned me about marrying a woman with kids, thank you. Your cautions made me consider carefully what I was committing to. They made me certain of my choice. They made me work harder to prove you wrong. And to Ethan, my son in every way that matters, thank you for asking that question I'll never forget. Thank you for choosing me as your dad. It is, without question, the greatest title I will ever hold. If this story touched you in any way, please consider subscribing to the channel for more real-life stories that remind us of what truly matters. And remember, family isn't always about blood, sometimes it's about who stays, who chooses, who loves without condition or reservation.